Final perspective on the whole Star Trek Online fiasco is Derek Chester. For those who don't know Derek Chester, Derek was the writer for Star Trek Bridge Commander and Star Trek Legacy, and coming soon, the Star Trek Year 4 comics from IDW Publishing. Thanks for taking some time with us, Derek.
Oh, no problem. You asked me, and I'm happy to be here.
So what's your whole take on this Star Trek Online fiasco?
Well, I think there's probably a lot that, having been on the development side for a number of years, long before Perpetual was even around, it happens at companies, big companies. They were a upstart company, that wanted to take on a very big project that was actually in production before they were ever created. Before their company was formed. When I was still at Activision, that game was actually in development somewhere else. So that game has actually gone through more companies than than it's ever produced a single level of playable game time. It's tough to say exactly what's going on with them, but I would say that it's going to be some time before you ever know what really happened. It's kind of like with Origin. You didn't realize what happened behind the scenes there until long after it was dissolved by EA.
Hi, Derek. This is Mr. Giuliano coming to you from the future. Derek, in your opinion, what are the chances that this game will see the light of day within the next 4 to 5 years?
Well, like I said, I'm not the absolute expert on that because I didn't see everything that happened over there, and I have empathy for them because I don't want to have anybody not succeed. That's just not a good thing to wish upon anybody. But obviously they had gone through quite a bit of money in so many years, and not much came out of it. So you have to weigh that with how much productivity they had. As far as what's there now, judging by what I've seen, and I don't know, I would have to say there's probably not much there. I do know that CBS really wants the product. CBS really would like to see it come out. CBS would like to see it capitalized as part of, I would assume, this is a guess, but I'm assuming that they probably had a hand in trying to keep it alive. Because essentially they have to pay for the property for the privilege of making it, as it were, and in order to keep that going, there has to be some interest on somebody's behalf. The problem, I think, is going to be that they have, at least from what I read, quite a few debtors and people who I would guess are going to put a lien against the property itself. So if someone tries to develop it, then we have to deal with some real sticky tape, red tape, in order to be able to proceed. I do know the CBS, like I said, wants to see it come to fruition, but it's not up to them in terms of developing it, because they won't take it under their wing and develop it themselves. So they've got to get a developer who has a responsible nature to take it on and see it to fruition. In 4 or 5 years, I don't know. It's doable. It's doable. I know Rob Pardo and Chris Metzen. I talked to him 2 years ago at the first BlizzCon, and they were telling me a bit about the development cycle of World of Warcraft, and it was accomplished, in about 3 years. So they did a lot, and they did it with everything that they wanted in there. They've added more over time, But what it started out with was very complete. I think somebody could do it if they had a developer that had the ability to budget properly and to put. I would say also you should put more resources probably into actually developing game design and developing actual gameplay concepts that are addictive and fun, rather than trying to get a name talent. I love Mike and I love John's artwork, but getting them on, I'm sure wasn't cheap.
You're talking about Mike Okuda and John Eves?
Yeah, they're both consummate professionals and wonderful people, but at the same time, they're probably fairly costly. I don't know exactly how much they paid him, but Mike does great work, John does too, but they probably cost him enough money that it was it probably put a hit in, and they had to capitalize the project. And beyond that, they've been in there for what is it now? Coming on 3 years? Is that right? You guys keep up with it more than I do.
Yeah, just over 3 years.
Yeah, so they've obviously been trying. I would say this from the other perspective is that you have hits and you have misses. Bridge Commander, it was great because Totally Games wanted to make a great kick-ass game. They wanted to make something that was amazing and fun. And was it everything they wanted it to be? Probably not. There's more stuff that we wanted in there, but it's affectionately looked upon as a good game, as a fun experience because it felt Trek. And then there's Legacy, where it didn't quite meet everything that Dorothy and I wanted. A lot of things got cut out of it.
Dorothy Fontana?
Yeah, Dorothy. Sorry, I just call her Dorothy all the time. It didn't have everything that we wanted in it, and we did a volume of work for it, but not all of it got seen. Now, I think it's easier to judge a product when it's complete, and unfortunately, Legacy was never completed to the way it had been or how it was envisioned in the design. But I would say that Bethesda did everything they could to deliver the product as best they could. In most circumstances, that game probably would have been canceled. In STO's thing, it's had its ups and downs. They've tried to keep going. I don't think they want to make a bad game, probably like Mad Dog didn't want to make a bad game. I don't know. I don't know what their capabilities are, though. You know what I'm saying? You have to weigh what they're capable of versus what your intentions are.
In your opinion, this game changed development cycles and changed vision several times. Do you think that was the main hamper behind it?
I've seen that happen a lot before. A lot of games had that same problem over the years. It's actually probably a countless number of games that never saw the light of day, or sequels that were canned and shelved before they were ever even gotten to even 2 months of development, like Bridge Commander 2. I think that they probably had every intention of trying to deliver on something that was bold and unique and new in good faith, but I think that probably more than not, they found that being a company that's starting up with investment capital and having to manage that properly and not having a string of titles already released to fall back on with that kind of consumer faith, for one, and faith in investors to come give you money, I think that they probably were very well intentioned, but I just don't think they probably budgeted properly, and I don't think that they probably put the focus on gameplay. At Origin, they used to have a saying, and that's gameplay is king. And Richard Garriott always held to that, is that you've got to, gameplay comes first, beyond anything else.
Okay, so I'm the head of Cryptic Studios, or whoever is picking this game up, and I come to you and I say, here's all the pieces. These are all the pieces I have. I'm giving them to you. Where would you start?
You start over. You bulldoze everything they did.
Wow, really? One more quick question. What's the chances we're seeing a Duke Nukem Forever in space here?
Well, I've worked with a lot of people over the years, and a lot of them are considered, 1994, I think PC Gamer called a lot of these people game gods. And, every now and then when I trade emails, they know I work on Star Trek, and they know I've written for the show, and so it invariably comes up talking about Star Trek games, right? Because they're in games, and I'm in TV, and I'm dabbling in games and comics and other things, novels, and that comes up. And when STO comes up, a lot of them, going nameless, of course, did not express confidence in the product ever being completed because of the developer. Now, to be clear about that, there are some very talented people at Perpetual. Darren Stint was involved with some of my favorite games, but name recognition alone and being a part of another good project doesn't necessarily mean you have the experience to do it on your own. There's big teams. Like Blizzard is a big team. They work as a team, as a unit. And Absolutely. They don't do anything alone. So just because you get one or two people from there doesn't mean that you're going to have all the ability to make this game. I do think there's a strong possibility that, at the very least, what Perpetual produced is going to be destroyed indefinitely. I don't think you'll ever see the game that they were making. I don't think you'll ever see the code that they were using. I think what you probably will end up seeing is, if anything, is a brand new game, probably made with their technology, which again, as I've heard is fairly impressive for their server client software and all the things that they use. But again, a game is more than the latency to connect to it, right? I mean, that's great. Something you put on CNET or you put in a technical doc. That's not something gamers are concerned with. One thing: is it fun? Is it engrossing? And if it's based on intellectual property, does it fulfill their vision of what they feel it should be?
Okay, so long story short, it sounds like that we're going to be going back to square one with Star Trek Online. Last 3 years of development is being scratched, and we're just going back to basics, back to the beginning. Based on all of your experience over the many years that you've been involved with Star Trek, would you personally be optimistic at seeing a Star Trek Online released in the future?
Oh, of course. I mean, the possibilities for an MMO of Star Trek would be great. But I think it falls to, it's going to be a big task. People's expectations and the in-depth quality of the gameplay, that's going to have to be developed by somebody who really wants a lot of work. And having worked with Paramount over the years, and now CBS, Viacom, is that I can say that they're sticklers for certain things. Sometimes they'll make you go back to the drawing board on a model, a game model or script or whatever. They had the final word on everything. So working on a property isn't always the easiest, but I would love to see an MMO come out, that makes proper use of the license and is fun and doesn't throw out the license for sake of gameplay, but also doesn't throw out gameplay for the sake of the license. There's a balance to strike. But I think if they got a developer who did that, I would love to see it.
Okay, folks, so we're going to take a short break now and head on over to this week's Fleet Radio transmission. We'll be back right after that to discuss the rumours that have been circulating about a Star Trek 11 movie tie-in game. So stay tuned, folks, and we'll be back right after Fleet Radio.